thanks Jean for inviting me to come and speak today, and to Belinda and to the National Football Museum. To talk about Girlfans, which is a project I've been working on since 2013. As Jean introduced me before, I am a lecturer in fashion communication at Liverpool John Moores University. And I've been there for the past 3 years. Prior to that, I was course leader of BA Fashion Styling at University of Central Lancashire. So I don't normally talk at football conferences. I normally talk about fashion, and when I'm in the fashion department, people don't talk about football. So I say this all the time because I always feel like I'm kind of straddling different subject areas. So really, Girlfans came about because of, I think, really a lot of my own personal experiences of being a fan of Liverpool. I'm really worried that someone might heckle me as they walk down the escalators when they see images of Liverpool fans on the screen. So my own experiences of growing up in Liverpool, not necessarily actually going to games at Anfield, because members of my family weren't into football, it was just me. And so, yeah, so I'd been to Anfield, had a walk around the stadium in 2013, the first game of the season. And it struck me, and I don't know why it didn't strike me before, it struck me that there were a lot of female supporters walking around the stadium. And from that, I then looked at the statistics of Premier League supporters, which I think were from 2011-12. There were 23% of supporters going to games, female supporters, so 1 in 4. And I thought, why am I not hearing these supporters talking about the game on podcasts? I used to listen to podcasts travelling to and from work. Why are they not represented in the media? Why are they even in the ad breaks between televised football games on Sky Sport or ESPN, as it was, BT Sport now? Why are those adverts not, don't even feature women? So yeah, just kind of questioning all of that, really. And also, I'd been into the club shop and was kind of looking at merchandise available for women, and there's a whole other story, isn't there, about gender-specific merchandise targeting women and girls, the whole noise and story around pink merchandise. I mean, I'm not a shirt wearer anyway. I have one very old, 90s shirt, but I would never wear them anyway because I think I look awful in them. But that's actually the opposite of what I found out from working on this project. And I think also I'd heard about, I'd grown up with kind of men's stories about the game. Lots of amazing stories and tales, no doubt, of male supporters who had followed Liverpool across Europe in the glory years. Long time ago. And I knew there was some amazing academic research being done by Stacey Pope, who we listened to earlier on. But with my own practice, which was more about art and styling and image making, I wondered how I could make a difference, to this. I didn't want to write about it. That's not kind of what my own practice is about. And I think I tackled the idea of these supporters not being visible in a very literal way, which was, I know, I'll photograph them all. Obviously, there are millions of them, 3.5 million. Yeah, but I'll photograph them. And it was quite literal. It was about just trying to sort of photograph as many supporters as I could. I suppose also the antithesis of the supporter that we would all see at those international tournaments, even 2016, the Euros, you still, you know, you could still see that kind of sexualized image of a supporter in the stands. So yeah, to sort of photograph fans as they were, as I found them in and around stadiums, and in my small way, because when you start a project like that, you never know where it's going to go, to sort of elevate the female supporter, if that makes sense. So I applied for a small amount of funding at UCLan, and I hope you won't see it as name dropping if I name the person who gave me the small amount of funding. Was Professor Labena Himid, who's just won the Turner Prize, who John knows very well, and was just such an incredible research mentor when I was there, and is also into football, which was great. So I could talk to her about it. And she also has an amazing project about black representation called Positives, Negatives. That's right, John, isn't it? If you want to have a search for that, it's the most amazing art project. So yeah, so the idea was to start photographing supporters, and how would I communicate that at the time in 2013? So I'd grown up kind of with, you know, The End, if anyone's heard of that, which was a quite well-known fanzine in Liverpool, Peter Hooton. Peter Hooton's fanzine. Not really seen a lot of The End, but I thought, you know, I'll use this as a kind of medium in getting the photographs out there. I'll use a fanzine, a traditional fanzine. I only have one. There's only one left of the first one, which is the Liverpool one here. And, you know, I was thinking about how I would design it, so the design elements are that it's in newsprint. It's something that you can roll up and put in your pocket. It's largely full of images of fans, all ages, all faiths, all races. It's a very diverse fan base at Liverpool and Everton and Manchester City again. Sorry, we're talking about City again. And on the back page of each issue is a roundup of the league table, because it's a study that I do over a year. So I photograph between 8 and 13 games I think I've done each year, to get a real good kind of feel for that particular fan base. Yeah, so the pink page at the back is not because it's a female publication. Obviously references the football pink. Anybody that remembers the football pink? Some people, okay. Yeah, and even though it's kind of made using InDesign, it's kind of put together on a computer, I still feel it's got a DIY kind of aesthetic to it. Over the course of the 3 issues I've had contributions from other people as well. So the first 2 photographs were by myself and a photographer, Alex Hurst, who's now an academic at UCLan. And the 3rd issue at Manchester City, which was a very different experience because of the stadium, because the stadium is so big and City Square is so big. We had some undergraduates from Liverpool, John Moores, also taking photographs. So there's a level of imperfection there with the imagery. I mean, one of our students, Shamini from Sri Lanka, who just joined us, didn't know how to use a digital SLR. She took photographs with her phone. So there's a kind of imperfection which I quite like. I'm not really into that mega perfect aesthetic. And there are, you know, alongside the league table position, there are other things in the zine, because it is a zine for football fans, so we put dates in there and scores in there, and that's one of my favourite issues. At the top right, this bird is getting back on its perch. It was 2013-14, quite a seminal moment. Does anyone know what that refers to? Alex Ferguson's comments about knocking Liverpool off their perch. Not only were there 2 women holding the flag obviously the message on the flag is, you know, quite witty. And that game was the game that we lost the league. That was when Chelsea beat us. Oh. Okay, moving swiftly on. The funding, the small amount of funding, actually, it's a zine that I sell. At the time, I didn't have a website. Yeah, great strategy. No website. It sold in a couple of independent bookstores. It sold in gallery bookstores. It didn't have a website. It had a life on social media, which I'll talk about later on. But the funding and you know, buying the zine allows me to print the next issue. You know, so there are no profits, but funds from each zine go to the next and roll over. So we went on to photograph supporters at Everton. Obviously, geographically, it was quite easy to do that because I'm based in Liverpool. And why not? Because we've got a great footballing powerhouse in Liverpool and the Northwest. And which also included a visit to Wembley during that season, 15-16. And it was quite nice to observe supporters in and around Wembley who'd kind of dressed up for the occasion. The woman on the cover is wearing Chanel trainers. They're £500. They're white. She obviously feels safe enough that she can go to a stadium and wear them and they won't get dirty. Or, as somebody said, they won't be urinated on because there's a whole different ball game now. And wearing a Louis Vuitton bag and a signed Everton shirt from the early 90s, I think. Paul Rideout had signed it. And I suppose other observations are at Everton, particularly of all the little girls wearing full kits. There was a lot of that at Everton during that year. And two other supporters. The idea of the zine, I guess, initially, I mean, you never know what you're going to find if you're embarking on a photographic project. Was that I was always thinking about nuance and the supporters who support their team but don't go into the club shop and just buy everything, because that's me. So I was quite interested to see how people do support their team, and you can imagine with the two ladies at the bottom that they, you know, the woman on the left will just take her scarf off. The other woman is just in various shades of blue and pattern and can walk into a stadium and walk out of the stadium and football's over. And then on to City again, as I've said, which was a very different experience. Particularly nice because I'd not been to the Etihad before and didn't know what to expect, and it felt very new and felt very fresh. And so I think the narrative within this publication is a lot stronger because I already knew the clubs that I'd been at in Liverpool. There is definitely a stronger narrative in terms of, and it's a larger publication. It's 64 pages. This narrative was about, you know, kind of walking into the full-on corporate experience. That's why I've included that image of, you know, the welcome image at the front of the Colin Bell stand. Louise on the cover, Louise Salmon, flies in from Sweden with her son and her husband, and she only comes to games like 3-4 times a year. So I found her literally bouncing around City Square with excitement, and stopped her and photographed her, and she was just, and that's part of the project as well, is that I talk to fans before they go into games, when that hope and expectation is there and it's high and everybody's really happy and really positive, and it's generally, always actually, a really positive experience, which is great. But the images on the right, I think, you know, I'm documenting those supporters and who they are and how they dress, but also I found within City Square, which is often derided as being, you know, Manchester City, I hear it all the time, the Disneyfication of football. My experience of talking to supporters at City Square is that they love the space, they feel relaxed in the space, they feel safe in the space. So there are also images of female supporters, you know, standing alone, waiting for friends, sitting, having conversations. There's a supporter bottom right sitting, listening to music, eating their lunch, having a coffee, no alcohol involved. So it's a whole different kind of experience. You feel so safe that you can be 8 months pregnant and still go to the football, still feel okay about it. So that's kind of what the Manchester City narrative is about. And it was really great because Manchester City also supported the project. They supported the printing of the publication as well. And we went to have a launch, which I'll also talk about. So moving on, yeah, so the appetite, I think, for the replica shirt was one of the things that surprised me quite a lot. Replica shirts, the kind of most up-to-date shirt, the vintage shirts from the season before. Yeah, that was one of the surprising sort of outcomes of the project. And I think it's been the same at all clubs in the clubs that I've covered so far in the Premier League. That particular year, Manchester City had a women's cut with a V-neck, and so it was interesting to see just how many supporters were actually wearing those shirts. On the very first day, the first day of the season, I photographed about 20 supporters. And I'd say kind of half of them, women between the ages of 16 sort of to 25. I talked to them about the shirts and kind of what they thought of the V-neck and just things like that. And they'd been buying boys' shirts because they wanted the kind of same neckline that the players wore, but they just wanted kind of a smaller fit. So really loved the idea of that within a sport that's so heavily branded and commercialized, and the whole exit through the gift shop. We go to the stadium, we go to the shop, that there are still ways of kind of expressing yourself in terms of how you dress and what you choose to wear. And Poppy there on the right, love the idea of the Etihad as well, being like she was promenading around the Etihad Stadium, you know, kind of walking around because it's so spacious, almost as if it is a runway. And just out of shot, because she took it off, was her Stella McCartney bag, and she's got Isabel Marant trainers on. So this idea of supporters, some supporters do dress for the game. It's very important for them to dress for the game. And the appetite really for the shirt amongst the kind of long-standing fans. So I think another reason the zine is in print as well is that, you know, not everybody is on the internet. You know, even I have friends that don't have Facebook accounts, and didn't want really to exclude anybody. But yeah, the appetite for the shirt amongst supporters of all ages. So on the right, you've got Edith and Jean, and they had 17 family members at City, all kind of scattered around the stadium. And Jean on the right was wearing in that season the latest shirt. She bought a man's replica shirt and was still wearing it. I don't know if we always consider supporters of that age within marketing, you know, and do clubs actually market shirts to 80-year-olds? I don't know. Maybe they should think about that. And then Joy on the left, who I'd photographed, but I'd been sort of observing Joy before she went into the stadium. Again, she'd been sitting, reading a book in City Square, and 10 minutes before kick-off, you know, kind of just got up and went in with her season ticket. And I love Joy's combo of lime green. Is it lime green? Everything. Nails, shoes, watch, bag, glasses, shirt. Again, I don't know if within marketing people are actually targeting people like Joy, who's a retired art teacher from Lytham, you know, and just lives for football. Okay, and so at the end of the season, the Whitworth invited me to launch the Manchester City issue at the gallery as part of their Thursday Lates series. Again, supporting their ethos of working with non-traditional art audiences. And so I was able to present the publication alongside pieces of fan art. So somebody in America had embroidered a small Man City shirt and sent it to me. So we exhibited that, which I then passed on to Steph at City for the archive. Box-to-box football, supplied a vintage shirt. Steph also very kindly tracked down Helen Turner's bell, contacted, Helen Turner, who's the really famous City fan who rung the bell at Main Road. Kevin and Shirley brought the bell to the event. And Chawton Ladies sang at the event. It was really, really lovely. And Julie Dolan, who makes the fantastic Aliens knitted hats. I don't know if you're aware of those. If you're into City, you would be. Also lent us some hats. And it was just a really lovely event and fabulous to, my original words, to elevate the female supporter. Now we were in the Whitworth Art Gallery, which was great. And so going forward, so the Girlfans project will explore the past, present and future of female fan culture. And it's fan culture, it's football and it's the male game that I'm largely interested in. Over the course of making the work, I've met loads of lovely fans, become friends with quite a lot of them, connected with a lot of other supporters on social media. And I sort of maybe wanted to address the idea that, as I mentioned earlier, that I'd grown up hearing stories, kind of men's stories about the game and heard their experiences. And so I really wanted to connect with some of these fans that had been going to football for quite a while. And so I came up with the concept of the prequel, which is not a film, but it's publications, another series of Girlfans publications, which I suppose lead up to 2013. And I think because it was the anniversary of the Premier League last year, I was thinking of, what happened before the Premier League formed, what happened at these grounds, what were the facilities like, how did you travel there? And so started a series of interviews with some of the supporters. And so it will be, I'll create publications, but I'll use the fans' own images. And I just thought of all of those amazing images that must be sitting in lofts, in attics, around the country, around the world, that are just sitting, gathering dust. Can we tell a story with those? And I'll show you some of those images in a second. And also that they're unfiltered. A lot of those images being taken with film. I'm going to move on because I'm being too slow. So I saw you do that before you did it, before you gave me the yellow card. So yeah, so here are a few images anyway from Elaine Shaw, who's an Everton supporter, who I'll show you that one. And I'll read a little bit about Elaine Shaw's experiences. She studied at Cambridge University, and as the only girl in the society, she joined the Cambridge Society for Everton Supporters in 1975. The only girl in the society, no quarter was given to me by the blokes during the footy matches, and the only concession was that they would stand guard if I needed the loo at Trinity College, with men being the only college that had no female toilets. And I just want to go back to that image actually, because this is a story. This is the female story of the stories I heard growing up, which is Elaine and her mother travelling to the European Cup Winners' Cup in 1985. So I'll maybe conclude with this. It's a nice place to stop. On the Tuesday evening, my mum, 65 years old, and I set off from Lime Street to travel by train and ferry to Rotterdam for the final. We slept on benches with our heads on tables and finally on the grass outside the Feyenoord Stadium in what was a long but good-humoured journey. Again, being two female